to have a link for the audio that I can send to her when this is over so she can listen to it?
Yeah, I'll send you the full link for audio and video.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Chairperson Member Garrett and members of the Alcohol Advisory Council. The lobby is open and recording has begun.
Thanks, Dustin. We will convene the March 30th, 2022 meeting of the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board Alcohol Advisory Council meeting. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see everybody. It looks like we got a pretty full list of attendees, and we're going to kind of follow our normal course for these things. We got a few divisional updates that staff will give you, and trying to reserve a bunch of time for a roundtable to hear from you what's on your mind if you have questions or concerns. And there's a lot of staff that'll be online even if you don't see them presenting initially. So be wide open as usual. So I think we got plenty of time, and we will I think just get started with the divisional updates, and then when we get to the roundtable, we'll have a chance. You'll all have a chance to introduce yourselves as we go through that. So first up is our Deputy Director, Tony Hood, who's going to give us all an update on our SMP, System Modernization Project. Did I have that part right, Tony?
System Modernization Project. Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'll leave the rest to you.
Or you can just always say SMP. That's what we say, except I say SMP project, which is repetitive and shouldn't use that one. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I have a quick update regarding our project. A few weeks ago, we hired a project manager. We are very excited to have Michael Newberry on board. He has been working very hard the past 3 weeks, helping us get in line and get ready for the next stage. We also had a great meeting, a lessons learned work session with the OCIO. So the OCIO gave us a letter last summer asking us to work on 5 specific issues. And we had a meeting with them where we explained to them the status of our work on all of those issues. An example of that is revising the investment plan. And so that was one of those issues. The other issue was developing a new readiness quality assurance report from our quality assurance consultants. And so we had a good meeting a few weeks ago with them. Our results are due back to the OCIO by May 31st. We have actually set a goal for ourselves to have those done by the end of April. So we're hoping we can meet that goal. We finalized our contract with our quality assurance consultants. And along with finalizing that contract, we finalized the work plan. So what we expect them to do for us as part of that contract. We are very close to completing our RFP for our systems integrator. So the RFP will include numerous attachments, including a proposed contract, and that's the last piece that we're working on. So the functional and non-functional requirements, which are key to our RFP and what we want the system integrator to do, all of that work is done. We just need to finish the contract, the attachment, and then we'll be able to put it out for review. We have numerous people who will be reviewing the RFP before it goes out for publication. That includes the OCIO. We also have a company called Infotech who will be doing a review for us as well as internal people and our consultants. So we're very excited to get to the review stage, and then we anticipate that taking approximately 3 weeks, and then we can go out for publication. We are also working on a mitigation plan because Oracle, where our licensing documents are held, is coming to its end of life. The Oracle system is coming to its end of life. It will no longer have the support that it needs to run if there's a problem. For example, as we know with all software systems, there can be problems. So we are developing a mitigation plan, and our IT department is working well with the licensing department to develop that plan so we can use Laserfiche until, well, we will continue to use Laserfiche, but we have a mitigation plan in place that the team will use until the SMP project is done. And so that is my high-level update. If there's any questions about what's going on, I can certainly answer those.
Great, thanks, Tony. Yeah, and I should have said, if anybody has any questions for any of the updates we get, just go ahead and click your raised hand there, and we can take those as we move, or you can bring them up during the roundtable as well, of course. I'm not seeing any hands at this point, Tony, so stand by. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up is Chandra Beatty, our Director of Enforcement Education, for an update on her side of the shop. And I know I saw you. Good afternoon, Chandra.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good, good.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today to our Alcohol Advisory Committee. The lovely Dustin Dixon is going to drive slides for me today. So thank you very much for that, Dustin. Really quickly, just to review some data about how things are going in the world of liquor. Thought I'd share some youth access compliance rates. As you can see, November was a bit of a rough month, but we're recovering from that. And you'll see some reflection of that also when we start talking about AVNs later in the presentation. In February, we saw 81% with still a large number of compliance checks, so that's good. I'd like to see that continue to improve, so appreciate. There's been, I've been really happy to see the response from the industry about improving those numbers and providing training and being active and knowledgeable about how to improve prevention of youth access. So I'm really appreciative of the partnership we have with the industry. And then when it comes to curbside delivery, we are still seeing, it looks like there's a data problem with February, so I apologize for that, and I will have to remedy that before we meet again. But you can see that we are still seeing a much lower compliance rate with delivery. I did want to share with you that a little more than 50% of those sales, when it comes to delivery, sales to youth, 53%, if I remember correctly, are third party. So I do want to make sure that the industry is aware of the responsibility there when they use third party delivery services to ensure that there's protocol in place to prevent youth access. And then just sharing with you some numbers as far as getting out there and doing premise checks and visiting and having personal contact with our licensees. That has stayed consistency well over 2,000 locations a month for the past 6 months. And then when it comes to educational contacts, it's really positive to see that we're out there and having informative educational contact with y'all in the field. It's nice to be post-COVID and be able to do a lot of that. So, and then when it comes to complaints, I wanted to share with you that those are increasing. And what we're seeing happen really is I've opted at this point to take out the COVID-19 complaints, because what we're really seeing happen is the COVID-19 complaints are decreasing or dropping off completely. And so we're seeing other types of complaints. So I just wanted to share with you what some of those complaints look like, what the topics are. For the first quarter of 22, as you can see, 550 of those were related to COVID-19. Service to an apparently intoxicated person, we had 86 of those. Some conduct violation, which sometimes involves employees doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or someone who's overly intoxicated on the premises. Violations involving minors, and also an employee without a permit or employee that appears to be underage. Those were our top 5 categories of complaints for the first quarter. And then when we start looking at AVNs, you can see there that November was a high number of AVNs. And so that's why I pointed out earlier when we were looking at our youth access, that is a really big driver of AVNs for the liquor industry. Next slide, Dustin. And so there we are again with when we look at first quarter AVNs, you can see that when we take out that youth access, which is a huge priority when it comes to public safety for us and for you, I know, when you take out the violations involving minors, it's a much smaller number that we're looking at. So I believe that's my last slide. If anybody has any specific questions, I'm available. Otherwise, we'll go on in the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Director. I don't see questions, so thank you. Appreciate that. And there's Becky Smith, Director of Licensing and Regulations, to give us an update on third-party delivery of alcohol. Hi, Becky.
Great. I thought you were going, so good afternoon. I thought you were going to say I was going to give an update on licensing. I was like, no, not on licensing, just on third-party delivery. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me speak on third-party delivery. Since this has been a topic for several of you in the industry, I've also asked Katie Doyle to join me in co-facilitating. So Katie, if you could turn on your camera, that would be fantastic. So as many of you are aware, third-party delivery is not a new concept for licensees. However, since the pandemic, that licensing has seen a steady increase in the licensees who are using this third-party delivery service. That has come with many challenges for the licensees and LCB. As all of you know, that retailers must submit their contract to licensing prior to using a third-party delivery service. We used to have a list of those third-party delivery services online. However, they've gotten complicated in the ways in which people want to deliver alcohol. And so now they're no longer online. It's no longer a blanket approval, that we look at each contract individually for each licensee that wants to use that contract. We found that there are a number of licensees who have contracted with third-party delivery services without notifying LCB. So this is really also a way to say, yeah, please remind your folks to make sure that they, that they're contacting LCB. We really try to review those contracts very quickly and get back to you if we have any concerns about the contract. That there are a number of marketplace facilitators, phone apps, and all of you guys I know are seeing this, that allows very low price delivery to be chosen at the end of the transaction. That typically this means that the third-party delivery only has a relationship with the marketplace facilitator and has no relationship with the licensee. Yet the licensee, as Director Brady mentioned, is responsible. The licensee, again, is responsible for deliveries if that third party delivers to a minor. That if the licensee, the licensee we've seen is contracts with a third-party vendor, and then that third-party vendor then contracts with someone else. We've heard from some of those folks that are actually delivering alcohol that have refused to deliver and have contacted myself and my staff asking what the rules are, wanting to know if it's okay for somebody under the age of 21 to do the delivery. Delivery must be made by those folks that are over 21 years old. They have to, that deliveries that contain alcohol must clearly be marked outside of the package so that the delivery driver is aware that the delivery contains alcohol. The deliverer must verify that the person receiving the alcohol is over the age of 21 and obtain a signature. And then alcohol products may not be left unattended. The delivery may not be made to an intoxicated person. The problem with all of that, of course, is that when we get into third-party delivery and these contracts that like I said, we've heard complaints from the delivery drivers themselves that minors are delivering alcohol and that they have concerns that there's no training or guidance for themselves or the employees. I've had conversations with Katie and Josh and Annie, for instance. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Katie, to see if you have anything that you want to add.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you for asking me to be your partner in crime today. Always happy to do so. I think that you've covered a lot of our most significant concerns. I think what I would add is that there's a lot of misinformation coming directly to our operators and licensees directly from these third-party delivery platforms. So they are doing a lot of marketing to our members and the industry as a whole, suggesting that they have the ability to deliver alcohol in a lot of situations where they don't, whether it's because of the payment platform they operate within or because spirits aren't part of the delivery process and it's only for beer and wine, and they're offering to deliver cocktails and other types of spirits when they cannot. We've seen a lot of members just feel really frustrated because they're getting marketed by these companies on a regular basis, so multiple times a week, and they don't understand the risks. So I think that there's a huge lack of education when it comes to this topic, because they don't understand that they are the ones liable when, you know, a delivery happens to a minor. They're the ones liable if a delivery happens to someone that's visibly intoxicated. And so we on our end of the Hospitality Association are working through some of these issues. It's really important to us that we work in partnership with these platforms, especially the larger ones that have broad representation, not only by fellow lobbyists, but also, you know, internal representation as well, so that they better understand how to interact with the Liquor and Cannabis Board and with the industry as a whole, because our hope long term is to see these practices get ironed out and become normalized. And we'd love to see a version of 1480 pass in 2023. That's no surprise to anyone on this call that we've worked really hard to create a lot of these allowances, and believe that some of them are great, but some of them need a lot of work before we're able to make any of these things permanent. So how do we start working in the third-party space as the business climate continues to shift and change into something where delivery is normal, but we need to make sure that we're doing it safely. And so we're always willing to be at the table, and I think that's our next ask, is that we pull together a smaller work group that really focuses on a lot of these issues because they're really important to us. And so that's what we're hoping for.
Great. Let's, Scott had a question. Go ahead, Scott.
All right, technology challenges. Thanks, David. Hey, a couple of quick questions, Becky. One, are the rules for delivery universal, regardless of whether it's a third party or an employee, regardless of whether it is an on-premise licensee or an off-premise licensee? Is there a single set of rules that apply?
Great question. So I would have to say for on-premise and off-premise, the rules are the same as far as delivery. That they, like I said, they have to be over the age of 21. That they have to be that the licensee must conduct the sell. Let me just go down here. Sorry. So in short, yes, they're the same. But, and I'm going to say sometimes there might be some differences, and I can get back to you on what those differences are, Scott.
Okay. And then
I hate to say somewhat yes, but it's somewhat yes.
that would be the universe of all answers to all alcohol questions, right? Somewhat yes, somewhat no.
Somewhat yes.
So quick follow on to that. Has most of your effort or the look, and I know, Chandra, you talked about compliance checks. Has that really focused on delivery from on-premise licensees, or has it looked equally at on-premise and off-premise licensees who are delivering?
Both, Scott.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions out there? Okay. Becky, is that it?
Chairperson,
Yeah. Chandra.
If I might, I just want to highlight what a great partnership it is when we have the Hospitality Association, Katie, working with us to solve these problems. It makes us more effective as a team. So I just like to really highlight how nice it has been to work in partnership with many of the industry on this issue.
That's great. Good to hear.
Yeah, I would second that. And I think that the next steps I would hope for licensees, the association and wineries and breweries and others would be for us to gather a small group with the rules folks and see what we need to look at as far as maybe exploring and considering some policy changes.
Okay, great. Thank you
Thank you.
both. Appreciate it. We're going to add a little thing here. I should have mentioned this at the top of the agenda, but we wanted to spend just a few minutes for an rules update on 1480 allowances, and there's Kathy Hoffman.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon and hello, everyone. Actually, I'm going to kick this over to Audrey Vasic in a minute to provide an update for alcohol rules, but just wanted to welcome Audrey back from parental leave. I think the last time we met was in December, and she was at home with her new little one. So welcome back, Audrey. And then before I hand it over to Audrey, I just want to thank everyone for your really meaningful participation in our Listen and Learn sessions. We've gotten great feedback from you, and speaking of partnerships, we're looking forward to continuing to strengthen those with all of you through that rule development process. So thanks again, and go ahead, Audrey.
Thanks, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. I just have a few brief updates related to the House Bill 1480 study on the impacts of to-go alcohol sales. So we've been meeting with the contractor CDM group on a regular basis to receive updates. They're working on gathering quantitative and qualitative data and preparing for interviews with stakeholders. So we're on track to meet that December 1st, 2022 due date of the study to the legislature and the governor. And just on the rulemaking side, I'd also add, on an unrelated note, we do have an ongoing rulemaking project related to axe throwing at liquor license premises, and the public hearing for that is set for April 27th. And on the horizon, we're also looking at initiating rulemaking to implement 2022 legislation, Senate Bill 5940. That's the bill that created the new endorsement allowing manufacturer licensees like breweries, wineries, and distilleries to contract with each other to provide certain packaging services. So that's all I have on my end, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions for Audrey about allowances? Seeing none. Thanks, Audrey. Okay, we making good time here. We're gonna jump into our roundtable conversation. I have a list here. I think I've got everybody who is here, but if you don't get called on, just let me know, and we'll make sure everybody gets a chance. And this is just the order in which it was sent to me. We'll just start with Roland. Roland Thompson, representing California Wine Institute. What's on your mind these days?
In the past session, we weren't really that concerned about much with what the LCB is up to. Our primary focus was on the Enhanced Producer Responsibility Bill that deals with our responsibility for the bottles and the rest of the containers that hold our wine. We're more interested in what the board is up to and what the other interests represented at the table have to say today. But we really didn't have much concern with what was going on with the legislature other than that. Thank you.
Okay, that's a good position to be in. And we'll move to Paul Beveridge from the Family Wineries of Washington. Hi, Paul. Oh, can't hear you.
Am I on now?
There you go. Yeah, hi.
We were happy to see the license plate bill go through. Shows when we all work together, it's easy to get things done. We continue to be concerned about the number of small wineries that are going out of business. It seems for every new person who's willing to risk their retirement fund on starting a new winery, we lose an old one. And part of that is the tax burden. Part of that is the lack of distribution. And so we still would like to see more help for small wineries if we really want to be this great winemaking state. We can't have 100 wineries going out of business every year. So that's our priority going forward. And we were, of course, disappointed that our tax bill didn't move in the legislature very far this year.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. What and I didn't follow it that carefully. How far did it go? What was the
in the last session? We got a hearing in the Senate, but we didn't get executive session, and we continue to have opposition from the larger wineries and the California wineries. If we include them, then the fiscal note goes way up. And there are members of the legislature that don't want to give tax breaks to big wineries.
Right.
And then if we don't include them, then they oppose it. So it makes it difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the update. Appreciate that. Roland, were you just going to add something there after? Yeah.
Well, I suppose I could, but it is an issue of size. You can't discriminate on the basis of size, and you also can't, I don't think, discriminate on through a long string of cases I'd be happy to talk about on in-state and out-of-state wineries. So I would imagine there's not a way out of the box here.
Yeah, we continue to disagree with Roland on the California Wine Institute's analysis of this. We think the bill is perfectly constitutional and would survive scrutiny. And we've done every different version of the bill, including Roland's clients, and he still opposes it. So it's been difficult.
I wouldn't necessarily say I oppose it, but the tax break is nice, but I don't think you can discriminate between large and small wineries in that regard. For the first run of production, that's fine. But anyway, that's not something that needs to be litigated here.
Right. Okay. I appreciate hearing from both of you on it. Paul, anything more?
Not today.
Okay, great. Good to see you. Scott, Washington Beer and Wine Wholesalers.
Thanks, David. I think for beer and wine distributors, really one of the issues is an ongoing implementation. We had really seen a notable change, I think, in the relationship between the industry and LCB staff during the pandemic. It was one that was cooperative, that was really focused on solving problems to get to outcomes, and really looking at kind of balancing and providing clear rules to help everybody move forward. It was hugely appreciated, and I think it had a big effect in helping the industry get through an incredibly tough time. I think for beer distributors, we've got a strong interest in continuing to foster that relationship, and also to further a little bit more efforts to figure out how we can find a way to, I think, set clear interpretations from the LCB of the law, and to publish those broadly so that really all licensees are aware. I think it would be a huge help, not just for licensees, but also hopefully for the LCB in maintaining kind of an ongoing set of consistent interpretations that can be used to train both folks externally and internally. I want to thank both Justin and Chandra for their efforts in the discussion so far. I think this is going to be an ongoing request and an ongoing project. So we look forward to doing it, but we think it has substantial value, and really would like to see if we can continue to make progress on getting something that can be a tool for everyone.
Yeah, well, thanks, Scott. I absolutely agree. We need to hold on to the good things that we all learned to do together during the pandemic, and try to keep the productive relationship going outside of that kind of oppressive crisis, and open to specific suggestions from any of you about what did we do that worked well, and how can that translate. Scott, I was just going to ask you if you had a example when you're talking about setting clear expectations for me. Is there one that comes to mind of something where we could lay that out better?
Sure, I'll give you one example. This has really been one that most recently been talking to Chandra and her team about. We're starting to see a lot of cross-pollination between alcohol distributors and non-alcohol distributors. Both distributors, rather than carrying their traditional products, are now carrying a wide variety of products that cross both lines. The rules for behavior are different between those two industries. I think the challenge that we've seen, at least on the beer side, is our colleagues on the non-alcohol side who are starting to get into the beer space may not be as aware of those rules. And quite honestly, on our side, there is, I think, an ongoing effort to help people understand that the rules apply regardless of whether you're distributing an alcohol product or a non-alcohol product. So it's both an education piece, but it's kind of an ongoing effort. That would be a great example, I would say, of an area where we could see some work, and I think there would be value in the market.
You're talking about sort of the restrictions on whether it's a marketing piece or something that a distributor could give to a retailer if they're on one side or the other. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good example. Okay. Yeah. We'll certainly talk about that. Appreciate that. Thanks, Scott. Next up, Annie Mcgrath from the Washington Brewers Guild.
Hi, everybody. Annie Mcgrath with the Washington Brewers Guild. It's nice to see everybody today. We appreciate you pulling together these meetings. Washington small and independent craft breweries are continuing the recovery after being hit hard by the pandemic. I know I've shared with this group before that our Washington breweries are largely small and independent. 4 out of 5 Washington breweries were what we call neighborhood breweries. And prior to the pandemic, produced less than 4,000 kegs a year. When you are that size, your product is typically being sold in the form of a keg to a local restaurant or a bar or another entertainment venue, or it's being sold out of your own tap room in the form of pints at the bar or growlers out the door. So we were kind of uniquely positioned to really get hit hard by the pandemic and the restrictions and closures that were used to combat the spread of COVID-19. We are starting to dig our way out, and as business picks up again, we're seeing our industry rebound quite a bit. We still have not reached our pre-pandemic level of sales, and we're now dealing with the same issues that many in the hospitality industry are also facing with supply chain issues, access to cans and aluminum, and then also the labor shortages are continuing to impact our members. So we definitely still have some challenges ahead of us, and those challenges are somewhat pandemic related and others are not as pandemic related. And then we're also kind of looking forward to addressing some of the more typical concerns that we had prior to the pandemic and a lot of the work that we did with the agency before it was more of the emergency related responses. We think that there's still a lot of education that our members need out there and that retailers would also need regarding the kind of things that we used to see before the restrictions and closures on premise. So Brewers Nights are picking back up again. So we think that we need some refreshers on trade practices. What can you give to consumers? What can you give to retailers? You know, that kind of basic trade practice information will be really useful for our membership. We're also seeing events pick back up again, and our brewers have always participated in special occasion licensed events. Brew fests are big in our industry. Where we have staff, we're starting to send people out to those events again. And so, you know, where the laws are complicated and hard to follow in that area, we probably need a refresher on that too. So we're looking forward to partnering with the agency and getting out there a little bit more to visit with our members and provide just that kind of 101 on some of the most common violations that we saw prior to the pandemic that we're starting to get back into. And we're happy to be getting back into these activities again. But I think that it's something that we haven't focused on for a while, and it's going to need a little bit more focus.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true for anybody who's been doing one thing through this pandemic and now has to go back to the old way they did it. To even remember what that was isn't easy. So I think that's a great suggestion. Some refreshers. Yeah.
And then that's it. We're very much interested in participating in the third-party deliveries, and you know, just as I think Katie did a great job articulating where we're at in our industry too. It's very important to us that those products are not being sold and delivered to minors right now because the third-party delivery services are not licensees of the board. We are the only license that's liable. So that's something that we would love to work with you guys to correct. And then I might even put a little plug in for another area where there's a similar impact is with the special occasion licenses and promoters, because promoters are also not licensees of the board. And so you run into some of those same issues there too. So it might be something to throw into that conversation as well.
Great, good. And I'm sure you all know this, but I can tell you on the delivery in general and third-party delivery, a lot of concern from the prevention and public health community on that. And I'm sure they would also welcome the attention you and Becky's team is putting on this, and we can do better, clearly. So we'll keep working on it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate all that you guys have done on that.
Thanks, Annie. Mari, Washington Distillers Guild. Hello.
Right there. Thank you, David, for not butchering my name.
No, but you know, we asked ahead of time. So
there you go.
You know, I learned.
Still counts. I'm good. The industry sort of slowly, like sort of the beer and wine side, digging their way out. I share some of the concerns around a lot of small distilleries closing, and we're hearing that the majority of distilleries in the state had a tough Q1. I think the Omicron had a bigger impact than they had expected. And a lot of them saw a soft Q1. I don't know what it was like on the beer and wine side and on the hospitality side, but it definitely was on the distillery side. But moving forward, I think everybody's excited to see reopening happen, see people start going out again, and there's starting to be some business in the state. On the concern side, the topic that I've heard the most about from people lately is the Treasury Department report that came out, I want to say it was maybe 6 weeks ago now, on the health of the beverage alcohol business in the United States, and some observations and feedback from, I know, a number of players in the state. And one of the questions that has been raised with me now a number of times is what is the LCB, how is the LCB looking at that report? And are there any action items tied to it? And what kind of industry input are they looking for specifically? I think the thing that was interesting in it was the conversation in it around distribution and what's changed in the kind of middle tier of the industry and how that's impacted a lot of small operators. On the beer side and wine side too, we all share that. But I think that's probably the main thing that's come out. So great legislative session. So we appreciate the bill that that allows us to cross bottle and can. That's a lot of help for small players. And we also appreciate the fee reduction. So thank you.
Good. One quick question for you. Did your folks see the same sort of curve that the Brewers Guild did in terms of you didn't get the boost during the shutdown part that some of the other?
Yeah, you know, the thing about being a small player is, especially in this state, which I would call a chain retail state, you know, because of the 10,000 square foot rule, most of the liquor in the state is sold at grocery. Most of those grocery decisions are made in Ohio or California. And so not a lot of our members have placements for retail. There's very few retail locations left in the state. I think that is a big part of why it was a tough quarter for a lot of people. You know, when your own tasting room shut or has limited people coming to it, when most of the other restaurants and bars in the state are shut or have limited people coming to them, and then you don't have a retail presence, it's not really a very promising revenue scenario. So, and we heard from a number of retailers and restaurateurs that this is the first time I've ever heard that this had $0 nights in January. We talked to one restaurateur who's a fair size, who has a number of outlets, and said they had multiple outlets that had $0 nights. So that's a big concern.
That is big. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. On the Treasury report, we'll follow up with you on that. And I'd be interested if you had any thoughts on what that engagement should look like and do that. So if you have any, shoot me a note, and I'll talk to folks here too about it though.
Okay, thank you.
Look, thank you. Scott has his hand up there. Scott.
Thanks, David. Hey, just a quick note as a follow-on to your question. I see Chris Thompson's on. Chris has been really helpful in providing some of the tax collection data for the pandemic. And honestly, we've used that as maybe the best way to track by different categories how industries were affected during the pandemic. And Chris, I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong, but general takeaway was that beer and wine sales were flat. Spirit sales grew fairly substantially, but as Mari pointed out, that's not necessarily all spirit sales. That's really larger brands. Craft suffered, and I think Annie was pretty clear with me in noting that even though beer was flat, craft beer was down. So those numbers were great. And again, a huge thanks to Chris and your team for putting those together. I thought they provided a great snapshot.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Next, Katie Doyle again. Your time now. Hello.
Thank you, Chair Postman. Annie just said everything so eloquently. You can't tell that her, Josh, and I spend time together at all when you hear all of our comments and our continued agreements with each other. So I'd say that hospitality is still struggling. The labor shortage is what we're hearing now, probably the most. So you may try to make a reservation on a Saturday night and it looks full, and then you walk in and there's empty tables, but that just means there are not enough servers to serve that establishment for that evening. So, well, we're hopeful that we are rebounding and recovering, and a lot of great legislation passed this year to help us in those efforts. We are still hurting. I'd say that the third-party delivery issue is probably top of mind for us right now. So once again, we just really appreciate the thoughtfulness that the LCB is putting into this issue. And we're just really looking forward to working together on solutions, because public safety is our priority as much as it is yours. And so as responsible business owners, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our customers, and we certainly don't want any access to, for youth. So big issue there, and hope to work together on that. We will echo Mari's comments about 1359 and the license fee reduction. That was really helpful, and any support that the LCB provided on that, we thank you for. And then I will share that we are working, and I promised Beth I would do this, and so we are, on getting our operators to actually submit those temporary endorsement applications. So I know that those numbers have been really low for the licensing department, like kind of embarrassingly low. And so we, as an association, are putting some fire behind our communications to make sure that our operators understand that that's an important component when utilizing these temporary allowances, and really gives ammo to the third-party contractor to do an effective study on those allowances, and hopefully gives us what we need to pass something in 2023. And then very lastly, this is actually my last Alcohol Advisory Council meeting with hospitality. I know a lot of the internal LCB team knows this, because unfortunately they've just had to work with me a little bit too much the last few years. So I will be moving over to the grocery industry and representing WFIA starting mid-April. So I'll still be on here. My face will be here, but I'll just be representing a different association. And my fearless leader, Julia, will likely take my spot back. This was her spot for a long time, and she'll probably be here again. So
great. Well, congratulations on your new gig.
Thank you.
Good. Quick question for you, and really anybody. A couple of people have mentioned the labor issue. Has it gotten better at all?
No.
Worse? Same?
Honestly, Chairperson, I'd say it's probably just bad. I mean, I haven't heard of any improvements at all from any operator I've spoken to, and I would be shocked if others were seeing an improvement in the industry.
Because that is something that the minor employees in liquor establishments expires June 1, so we should.
Yeah, and that, along with our kitchen allowance, which your licensing team will just laugh because you've received 0 applications for kitchen allowances. But those are two things that we've passed. I've passed on to the team that, hey, let's be aware that these things are expiring, and do we need to have more conversations with the policy team about continuing to extend kitchen allowances? I get it's a little bit trickier, but
Right.
the minors is definitely helpful. And I think in 2023, there is an interest to actually pass legislation to make that permanent.
Okay. Josh.
Thank you, Chair Postman. Just wanted to add in, since you asked from other industries to hear
please.
from as well. Labor shortage is still a very big issue for your wineries as well. And I was going to mention it now. Similar to what Katie's mentioned and Annie's mentioned, it's continuing to be a real problem and a real challenge for us, from our smallest wineries to our largest. So we're trying to figure out creative solutions. One thing I want to give really good kudos to your team on is, back in the pandemic, I worked with them to get some more allowances for 18 to 20-year-olds who could do certain things with certain licensees, but couldn't technically do it in a winery. And they were willing to help us allow that. And a lot of wineries are in college towns, in places where they could have some extra effort or opportunity for folks who are very mature and need to be responsible, but at the same time could be helpful and do more things in a winery. And that temporary allowance was really helpful. So trying to think creatively, where can we find solutions to help in a very responsible and thoughtful way.
Okay, stand by 1 second. It's going to be your turn to report, but I want to turn to Member Garrett too, who has her hand up.
I just realized my camera was off again. I wanted to go back to tell Katie, she just explained what I've been experiencing out. I now know why I walk into a restaurant that wouldn't take any reservation and it looks empty, because that has happened to me for the last few weekends and things. But in talking to establishment, I was actually wondering, was anyone going to touch on the subject of labor? Because in talking to folks, it's been, everyone is expressing that in the restaurant, the grocery stores. And one of the things in talking to the one of the grocery stores by me, a QFC, is how tough it is to get people, but how quick they're having to get them on the floor and in these roles because of the lack of staff. And that in doing that, some things with the training is getting overlooked. And are you all doing anything, or is there anything where there's something going out to them on the importance of, you know, selling to a minor and on, because it was obvious to me in a situation I was observing in line that some things that would be normally a given of being checked and overlooked was not happening.
Yeah, so on our side, I mean, you have to have a food handler's card to even be hired or work at all. So I think that those bases are covered, and that training is really straightforward. It only takes about an hour, and it's low in cost. It's, I believe, $10 to get your food handler's card. But on the mass training side, you know, once again, as a server, it's 100% required. You technically can't give alcohol without that mass training, whether it's, you know, your class 12 or 13 permit. But I know that there probably are grace periods given in dire situations. And so that's a really great flag as a reminder to our members that as you're bringing on new staff, which hopefully you are, as your business picks back up, that those trainings are all mandatory to work in our industry. And so they need to be completed, you know, kind of upon hire, or at least in that first week, so that they're adequately ready to serve alcohol, so that we don't see more AVNs, because it's the last thing anyone needs right now. And I think it's also important to share that pretty much for every position, apart from those tip positions in our industry, they're paying significantly more than minimum wage. I mean, like significantly more, in the $20 range in a lot of positions, which is high for an industry that's relatively considered entry level. And that's still not bringing people in the door. So I think that may give a little bit deeper example of how hard our operators are struggling.
It is. It shows.
Okay, thank you. Josh, now it's you are, I think you're the last person we have signed up, so go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Chairperson and Board Member Garrett. Josh McDonald, I'm the Executive Director of the Washington Wine Institute. We're the statewide trade association for the Washington wine industry, and have hundreds of members across the state, and from our smallest wineries out there all the way through. Do our best to work hard on their behalf and to be a voice of them and help them get through the pandemic, as well as just try to be solution oriented and do everything we can to help them thrive and succeed. So, Chair Postman, you asked about the tax issue, and I just want to mention real quick that we're, as I said, we're solution oriented and we're working with legislative leaders now on some options and some ideas. And we, for those who don't know, here we're one of the highest wine tax states in the country. We carry a very high tax burden, which we know goes into our counties and our cities and our state and our communities, and is important. But we do carry a high, and we think that we could be more competitive if we have that conversation with our legislative leaders on how we can compete with California and Oregon, who are our states in this country that we compete with, and we do think we do it better oftentimes. But we need that help on the financial side. So we're going to continue having those conversations with our leaders in Olympia. The last 2 years, Scott did a great job, and others too, saying this, but I just want to continue to echo how amazing your team has been since March 16, 2020, on to now. And we know we're no longer having to have masks on, and we're hopefully most are here, if not all are vaccinated. But the point being is that we're in a different place, and we're working hard to kind of get ourselves back up off the ground, and we're living in this in a different way, and we're getting back into events and seeing tourism come back at us. But through the last 2 years, there's no way that many of our wineries would be where they're at now without the help of your team. So, and we spent countless hours on the phone with them, thinking about how we could find solutions to every single problem, and then get together and work together between different agencies. And all of my years here, I've never seen so many agencies talk to each other and get to know each other and to find solutions together, whether it's health or L&I or the liquor board or the governor's office. It's been a true collaboration and partnership, and we hope that continues on. And I've been meeting with lots of wineries, and they can feel it out there. So it's been great. So I want to say again, just kudos to your team, and thank you so much. And we hope as we move into the future, that partnership, that solution-oriented approach to everything continues on. On the 2022 session, just a couple things I want to mention for the Washington wine industry. 5940 was mentioned. We were grateful for the support, and that bill that we can work as different licensees to help each other in packaging. That's always helpful, good creative, and I think very innocuous idea that should be helpful. We worked on Washington Wine License Plate bill. We're very proud of that. We spent 3 years working on that bill, and you're going to all run out and get your Washington Wine License Plate in November. I have no doubt about it. Support your Washington wine industry. But 3 years and 4,000 signatures later from residents of Washington State showing their support of the industry, and we worked with legislative leaders and representative chambers on that. We were grateful for that, to finally get that over and get more money for tourism, which is our lifeblood of the Washington wine industry. So we appreciate that. And then 1359 was mentioned. I want to thank the Liquor and Cannabis Board for their support, and Katie's great work on that. She led the charge and did a wonderful job, and we were just grateful to be part of that as much as we could. And then 1480 in the future is very important to us that we continue to work on. We want to see this go into permanence. And for us, being able to have our restaurants support their wine industry, both sales, but also the outdoor seating is a huge part of the law change and the rule change for us. The rules now allow us to keep a lot of our outdoor seating. A lot of our customers want to continue to drink wine outside and enjoy the outdoors, and make that a streamlined, easy process. Get rid of barriers. Things that have been complicated and archaic in the past. And so we want to see that continue forward, and we appreciate the Liquor Board's support on that. I mentioned labor shortages, also supply chain issues for the wine industry specifically. We're having a few real big ones. Bottles are very difficult to get, or they're 1,000+ times more expensive now. It is a huge challenge, and for the smallest to on up, whether it's finding them at all or being able to afford them. it's just really challenging. Plus, getting our wine out of the port for those who do move their wine into other countries and across the country that way, that it's been a real challenge there as well. So, and then finally, I just want to mention we are, as Annie did a great job talking about, we're also very focused as we go into these new phases of, okay, we're doing events again, we're going to events again, making sure our wineries know the rules, know the laws, don't get themselves in a position where they're being told they can do something they can't, or otherwise by whether it's a promoter or event organizer, and doing our best at the Washington wine industry to spread the education, whether it's through when they're participating in a special occasion license event, or they're using our special winery permit, which allows them. It's a very great permit. We appreciate the liquor board's support of that for many years back. Lets a winery take their privileges off the winery premise and market themselves in a cool, great space across the state. It's very rare and very cool permit, but we need to use it properly. We need to understand it. We need to continue to be responsible with it. And so we're spreading a lot of education with that permit as well. And then just generally just trying to answer and be a solution and be a helpful provider for the Washington wine industry whenever we can. So those are the things going on right now in the end of March of 2022. And again, thanks for having me, Chair and Board Member Garrett. And as always, feel free to reach out if I can ever be helpful.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. And I believe that's the last member of the council who is in attendance. Oh, we got one hand up. Just take me a second to see who it is. I don't know who that is. So go ahead. Dustin, if you can. We had one phone number there without a name attached to it who had a hand up, but now.
Yeah, I turned it on to allow the mic, so they should be able to speak.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. This is Brad Tower with the Washington Liquor Store Association.
Oh, hi.
Sorry,
Brad.
I'm audio only today. I'm just coming back from visiting family over on the east side of the state.
You're cutting
I have
out a
been listening
little
to the-
bit, so as much as you can speak up, because we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Got it. Apologies. I think I'm on a pretty solid point in I-90 here, but anyway, appreciated the ability to at least call in here, was listening in, and I'm interested in having a further conversation about some of the delivery stuff, although I realize that's not spirits. I just wanted to mention that we, as the Liquor Store Association, we're grateful to Representative McEwen for getting House Bill 2112 introduced. We didn't have a hearing on that. We didn't really have a legislative discussion about it, but I also wanted to thank Chris Thompson and a bunch of the LCB staff for working with us in advance of the session to put some ideas on paper about how to incentivize compliance issues through the potential for reduced licensing fees. For our smaller stores, those licensing fees are a significant factor in the overall competitiveness of our pricing on at least name brand items. So if you haven't, please take a look at House Bill 2112. We are hoping that we can have some conversations around that over the interim, and it will be something that could be widely supported by members of the industry as well as the convention community and possibly with the agency as well. So I hope I didn't cut out too badly. Thanks again for accepting just audio only check-in.
Yeah, no, great. We were able to hear you. And, I was hoping we would have a little bit of a conversation on 2112, but feel free to reach out too if you'd like. And I would welcome some education on that from your perspective too during the interim. If you want to try to do that, that'd be great.
Thank you. I'll take you up on that, sir.
Great. And then that brings us to Rick Garza, our Executive Director for Agency Report.
Good afternoon. It was, I guess, with respect to the alcohol side of the legislature, somewhat quiet, certainly different than it was on the cannabis side. But I just wanted to share, because many of our LCB staff that work with you daily are here and listening, and whether that's licensing, enforcement, finance, policy and rules, and Chris and the legislative, it's appreciate the comments with respect to the work that we've been doing together the last few years. Continue to hear that we need to continue to collaborate and communicate. With respect to third-party vendors, I heard the discussion about a work group that needs to be formed to look at that. And so I made note of that. You know, I didn't even think about the fact that, well, we allowed spirits to go, that it's not allowed to be delivered. So you even forget ourselves what we allow. So it must be difficult at time for our licensees to know what they can do and what they can't do with respect to the various allowances that we provided the last couple of years. Also, Scott Hazelgrove, you were talking about fostering the relationship. So anything you think we can do to communicate with our distributors and everyone. I know we use the MIW bulletin in the past and currently in order to communicate with folks. But I know that issue with respect to these other folks that were not in the alcohol industry distributing and now getting in the industry has raised some questions. And there is no way, Chair Postman or Ollie, that I'm going to take up 25 minutes so we don't put Ollie to sleep. So I guess the only thing I would share is you can see that everywhere you go, you can see the lack of servers. I was at a restaurant here in Olympia, just as an example, and hadn't been in there for quite some time. They've been closed partially and open, but they had a great salad bar, right? And I said, well, when are you going to, now that we're out, you know, and there's no mask, when are you going to set up the salad bar? And they said, we just don't have enough people to do anything like that anymore. So you're seeing menus cut. The menu at this place, and it's been around forever, has been reduced. And you're seeing, and so, yeah, I think anything we can do to help, like we have been in the past to assist you, we're here to help. And I'm happy to hear the communication is continuing. And we've got an interim in front of us. So any kind of meetings that we can have that would be helpful to better communicate, that's always good. But again, I just want to, it's just, it's reassuring, given the maturity, you know, of the industry, and the years that we've been working together. There weren't a lot of concerns raised at the meeting today, which is always good to hear. But let's stay on top of that. I know our staff is working with you. I appreciate the words from licensing and enforcement about the collaboration, the work that Chris and our finance folks are doing to provide information to the industry about the impact of the pandemic. So anything we can do to further that. Really, I don't have anything to share with respect, you know, like everyone, we're looking at reentry back into the building. Our enforcement division, for the most part, in the regions, is working day to day out there in the field with our licensees, and they're coming into work for the most part every day. Here at headquarters, we have a lot of people who are working from home, but you can sense that people are beginning, as we were yesterday in the office, had our first management team meeting in 2 years, face to face. Hard to believe that it's that much time has passed, but just so you know, we're slowly moving back into the workplace. But one thing's clear, it's going to be a hybrid situation where our employees, because they can both work from the workplace, you know, and from their home and from headquarters. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you might have, but appreciate the opportunity to share. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, any questions at all for Rick or anybody else on the staff from council members? Couple of quick things here before we wrap up ahead of schedule one. I would like us to try to meet again within the next 3 months, if that sounds right to everybody. If anybody has any other idea other than that, let us know. But we will look for time to do that. When we do meet again, we will have our third board member with us. Jim Vollendorf starts, I think, some may be by the 1st or soon after that. So just about a month away, he'll be joining us. I haven't met him in person yet. We had one great long conversation this way. And boy, I just super impressed. Sharp, positive, dynamic guy. And I think people really like working with him. I look forward to just having a new voice, new set of eyes and ears to sit with Ollie and I and do that. I think you'll all really get to like him. And we'll make sure that we build in some time when we next meet. And maybe we'll meet even a little earlier if you'd like, if you want to try to have a group session with him. I know it helped me when I first met with you all just to be able to see all the different pieces of the industry that are there. So we can think about doing something like that for Jim as part of his onboarding. As Rick said, I too, really like obviously hearing the positive reviews and the desire to keep that going, which I'm going to risk calling post-pandemic. I assume it's post, but anyhow, dissipating pandemic stage. I think it's essential to do that. I think the right way to look at this is that we all learned how to do things without the sort of baggage that might have been there that everybody does in any industry and any agency has. Nobody could afford to do that in the middle of that pandemic. So let's hold on to that. Frankly, parts of it'll be harder because we may not be in that same mode of giving allowances like we were. I'm sure that was a very different feeling for the industry to be across the table and have us proving things that in the past we hadn't. So it may not be as ideal in your view as it is once we get through this thing, but I think we're looking seriously at what worked and what didn't and how to improve it and how to make sure that these things are done responsibly. And, we obviously have extended a lot of these things either through the bill passed by the legislature last year or our own rules, where we're now obviously in the process of what we're, to 2 months from 3 months from some of those expiring. So lots to look at, and we'll be looking to hear from you all on how those are going. And we heard some good ideas today. We will, I'll try to talk to Mari about the Treasury report and other things. I think the idea of these refreshers on rules are a great idea because, as we've all said, starting to go back to do what you used to do is just hard. It just doesn't, there is no natural field to the flow of work these days if you've been at home for 2 years and now are going back to the office or your business has been closed. So even more so than we are. So, Ollie, anything to add today? No? Okay. Well, with that, I'll just pause one last second to see if there's any hands that shoot up for last questions or comments. And if not, we're going to move on and look for a notice at some point so we can get back together. And in the meantime, never hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. You know how to find me, and I would always welcome the conversation. All right. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.